Welcome back to another episode of Indistinct Chatter. I'm Eliza, and I don't have a news recap for you this week because I am recording this ahead of my vacation. So instead, I have a little theory, a conspiracy theory, if you will, before we get into today's episode. And the meat and potatoes of this episode today, aka the main topic, was suggested by Becki, a real life wild child WOA. Thank you, Becki. So let's talk about that conspiracy theory first. Have you seen this theory floating around that humans might not actually belong here, like to Earth? And I don't mean it in the way of, yeah, obviously, because humans are destroying it. We don't deserve Earth. That's a whole different conversation. I mean, like, what if we genuinely didn't originate here? What if we are the aliens? Let me explain. So, this came across my feed from an account on Instagram called Theories Haunted. And once I saw it, obviously I was hooked. The post lays out a bunch of reasons why some people believe humans weren't meant for this planet. And on the surface, some of them sound pretty ridiculous, but then a couple of them actually kind of totally make sense. Just keep an open mind here, okay? I'm going to break it down. So, first, our backs. The post argues that our backs weren't designed for walking upright, that evolution basically rushed that part. And honestly, this tracks. Billions of people on Earth have chronic back pain just from existing, just from standing up and walking around. No other animal on this planet has a chronic pain epidemic caused by its own basic movement. Dogs don't wake up every morning with a thrown out back just from sleeping weird. Bears aren't dealing with herniated discs, but somewhere between 60 and 80% of all humans will experience significant back pain at some point in their lives. So is this a fluke? Is it a design flaw? And here's where it gets a little more specific. So there's actually this guy, he's a self-described ecologist named Dr. Ellis Silver, and he wrote an entire book called Humans Are Not from Earth, a scientific evaluation of the evidence. And one of his central arguments is that the reason we have such bad backs is because we evolved somewhere with lower gravity. Lower gravity would mean that your spine doesn't have to work as hard. And then we got dropped onto Earth, which obviously has stronger gravity. And our bodies just never fully adapted. I do want to note, though, mainstream scientists do not take this book seriously, but the question itself, why do humans have such terrible backs compared to every other species? That's still a very good question, okay? Also, back to maybe belonging somewhere with less gravity. Before I even saw this theory, every time I'm in the pool, I think to myself, ugh, I wish that we had just a little less gravity so I can feel like I'm in a pool all day. You know what I mean? Like you feel lighter, you kind of feel stronger. And I don't know, I just feel more happy in my body when I'm in water, just floating, swimming, hanging out. Does that mean anything? Who's to say? Also, this made me think of the decom stepsister from Planet Weird. Does anyone remember that? Anyway, the second thing is that we can't drink the water. So 70% of Earth's surface is ocean. 70%. And we can't drink any of it because it's salt water. We also can't breathe underwater. And some evolutionary theorists say that we actually descended from fish like ancestors. So if that's true, why are we so fundamentally incompatible with the thing that covers most of our planet and what we are mostly made out of? Then the post talks about the temperature. So most animals can survive in their natural climate without any help. A wolf obviously doesn't need a jacket in Minnesota in January. A lizard doesn't need air conditioning in the desert. But humans, we can't survive in most of Earth's actual temperatures without shelter, fire, or clothing. It's almost like we're not built for our own planet. We're too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, almost everywhere, almost all the time. The fourth thing was talking about how our own sun is trying to kill us. So the very star that keeps us alive gives us all the happy feelings. It also slowly destroys our skin and our eyes. Extended sun exposure gives us skin cancer. It damages our retinas. Other species don't get sunburned. Actually, maybe some other mammals do. I think pigs might get sunburned. I'm not too sure about that. Maybe some hairless cats and dogs might. But in general, other species don't need SPF 50 to step outside for 20 minutes. Even with SPF 50, I'm getting burned. And here's the thing that the book I mentioned actually brings up. Neanderthals had brow ridges, those prominent foreheads. They actually functioned like a built in visor to keep the sun out of their eyes. Modern humans lost that. Why? If we evolved on Earth, why would we evolve away from sun protection? That's the opposite of what makes sense. The fifth thing talks about how we're so fragile. So, compared to basically everything else on Earth, humans get sick pretty easily. We are highly sensitive to toxins, gases, bacteria, viruses. Our immune systems are incredible in a lot of ways, but in other ways, it's laughably bad. A lot of other species can handle way more environmental stress than we can. The sixth thing, and this one's pretty deep, we feel out of place. This one is less scientific and it's a little more philosophical, but the post makes this point that so much of modern human life feels fundamentally unnatural. We spend most of our time indoors, disconnected from nature, overwhelmed by anxiety and chronic illness in ways that no other species seems to experience. And we have this deep, persistent longing for something more, for freedom, for exploration. Ancient myths from virtually every culture include some version of "we came from the stars." Modern theories echo that, and the question is, why do so many humans across so many different times and cultures feel like they don't quite belong here? So there are actually a few different camps on this whole conspiracy theory. So first, the panspermia camp. And this one is actually discussed in real scientific circles. Panspermia is the theory that life on Earth didn't originate here. It was seeded from somewhere else, carried on meteors, comets, or asteroids. NASA and other space agencies have found organic compounds in asteroids, the literal building blocks of life, which has made scientists take this idea just a little bit more seriously in recent years. The idea goes back to a Greek philosopher named Anaxagoras around 500 BCE, which means people have been wondering about this for literally thousands of years. There's even something called directed panspermia, which is the more specific and more conspiracy adjacent version of this. It's the idea that Earth wasn't just accidentally seeded, but intentionally seeded by a more advanced civilization. Francis Crick, who we've discussed in a previous episode, he's credited with co-discovering the structure of DNA. You remember that guy? Well, he actually proposed this as a hypothesis in 1973. So not necessarily as a fact or even as something that he believed in, but as a serious scientific possibility worth exploring. And that's kind of wild, right? And then there's the Ellis Silver Camp, which goes even further and says we were literally transplanted here, fully formed or close to it by aliens, possibly as some kind of punishment. Again, not mainstream science, but the questions he raises about why humans are so mismatched with their environment are questions that really don't have super satisfying answers yet. Now, do I think that we are aliens? I don't know. But just to go along with this, there is a book by Marie-Helene Bertino, I believe. It's called Beautyland. Highly, highly recommend. It's about a person who just never fully feels like she belongs, and there might be a little alien aspect to it. And it's a really, really good read. But in general, I do think that, the evidence that humans evolved on Earth through billions of years of natural selection, that's all pretty solid. And scientists can trace our ancestry through the fossil record way, 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 way back, like all the way back. Our DNA is consistent with Earth-based life, but also that whole back pain thing, the sun thing, the fact that 70% of our planet is water, and we're also made of water and we need it to survive, but then most of the water here we can't even drink. I don't know. Those are kind of just like a tiny bit little compelling, right? No? Maybe? Maybe we don't need to believe the whole theory in order to find some truth in it, or maybe find a little bit of comfort in it, or to just simply find it interesting, even if it's just that some parts of the theory you might believe. Like, why do so many humans feel like they're searching for something? Like, this isn't quite it. You know what I'm saying? And whether that's evidence of alien origins or just a byproduct of modern disconnection from nature, I'll leave it up for you to decide. And speaking of things that I personally don't love and wish that they didn't belong here, today's episode, it's going to give you the creepy crawlies. We're talking about ticks. I grew up in Wisconsin. I moved there in the first grade, and I think I experienced my first tick not long after we moved there. I remember finding it on my thumb in the library. And Becki's from Minnesota, which is also basically tick central. Am I right? I have hated ticks my entire life, or at least ever since I found out what they were. Before I even really had a reason to hate them, honestly. They just really creeped me out. There's just something deeply wrong about them to me. But then on top of that, my hatred really intensified when I was a senior in high school because I got Lyme disease from one of those fuckers. And since then, I spent a lot of time learning about them. So let's get into it. So, what are ticks? Like, what are they actually? We'll start with the basics. So, ticks are not insects. A lot of people think they are, but they're actually arachnids, the same family as spiders and scorpions. And for the record, I'm very chill with spiders. They're important and I never kill them. I've never met a scorpion though, and they do kind of creep me out. Wouldn't kill one though, but I would probably run away. Anyway, insects have 6 legs and 3 body segments. Ticks have 8 legs and 1 body segment. So the next time that you're grossed out by a spider, just be glad it's not a tick, because a spider doesn't really want anything from you, but a tick wants your blood. There are over 900 species of ticks on the planet. They exist on every continent except Antarctica. Go figure. Also, Iceland, Hawaii, and a handful of remote islands are among the very few places without them. In the US, Alaska is notable because it doesn't have a native tick species capable of transmitting diseases to humans, which honestly just kind of moved Alaska up on my list of places that I would be down to move to. In the United States, there are 2 main families of ticks: hard ticks and soft ticks. Hard ticks are the ones most people encounter: the deer tick, the Lone Star tick, the American dog tick. Soft ticks are less common and tend to live in animal burrows and bird nests. Are you feeling itchy yet? Maybe like something little is crawling on you? Because I am. But this part is important to understand because knowing how ticks operate helps explain why they're so good at making us sick. Ticks go through 4 stages of life: egg, larva, nymph, and adult. The whole cycle takes about 2 to 3 years, and at every stage after hatching, they need a blood meal to move to the next phase. So let's go over those stages. First up, eggs. A female tick lays thousands of eggs. A black-legged tick averages around 1,800, and Lone Star ticks can lay up to 11,000. She deposits them all in one mass in leaf litter or sheltered ground, and then she dies. And just like that, thousands of potential problems exist in the world. Then we get to larvae. When the eggs hatch, larvae emerge with only 6 legs. They're barely visible, smaller than a period at the end of a sentence. They crawl on up onto low vegetation, and then they just wait it out. This behavior is called questioning. They hold onto leaves or grass with their back legs, and then they extend their front legs out, just waiting to grab onto anything that brushes past. At this stage, they're mostly feeding on small mammals and birds like mice, chipmunks, and ground-feeding birds. This is actually how they pick up the Lyme disease bacteria in the first place. If their first host is already infected, they get infected too. Then we have nymphs. So nymphs are where most human cases of Lyme disease happen. They're active from spring through summer, exactly the right time when people are outside the most. They're about the size of a poppy seed, just a little itty bitty poppy seed. You likely won't see these things on your body without specifically looking for them. And because they're so small and their saliva has a numbing quality, yep, you heard that right. Their saliva literally numbs the bite so you don't even feel them. People often never know they've been bitten at all. Finally, adults. Adult ticks are bigger and easier to spot, about the size of an apple seed before feeding. They're most active in fall and again in early spring. They prefer large hosts like deer, dogs, humans. In the northeastern US, about 45 to 50% of adult female black-legged ticks carry Lyme disease. Now, this is also very important, okay, even if you live in the frozen tundra. Year-round vigilance matters. Ticks are dormant below 37 degrees Fahrenheit, but if you get a warm, sunny day in January, they can come back out. Ticks are not just a summer problem. And I already mentioned that their life cycle is roughly 2 to 3 years, but brace yourselves. Black-legged ticks, or the deer tick, the one that carries Lyme disease, they live for about 2 to 3 years, and they spend most of that time out in the environment, not on a host. They only eat 3 times in their entire lives, once as larva, once as a nymph, and once as an adult. But in between those meals, they just chill. They're vibing, probably in your leaf pile. Unfed deer tick nymphs can survive for up to 2 full seasons without a blood meal. Adult deer ticks can go for nearly a year without feeding at all. Other species are even more stubborn about it. The American dog tick can go up to 2 to 3 years without a host. Insane. So the idea that ticks die off in winter or that you're safe because it's been a while since they had a host, that's just not how it works. These things are built to wait you out. There are a handful of ticks you're most likely going to encounter in the US, and they don't all carry the same diseases. So first up, we have the black-legged tick, also called the deer tick. This is the big one. It's found across the eastern US and the Midwest, with a cousin called the western black-legged tick on the Pacific coast. This is the tick that carries Lyme disease. It also carries anaplasmosis, babesiosis, and Powassan virus, which is rare but can be very serious. If you're in Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Northeast, or the Mid-Atlantic, this is the tick you should be most worried about. Then we have the Lone Star tick, found mostly in the South and Southeast, spreading northward. This one is aggressive. It will actively pursue a host. It carries ehrlichiosis and can cause something called STARI, STARI, which is Southern Tick-Associated Rash Illness, which looks a lot like Lyme but isn't. Like the bullseye, you know what I'm saying? And there's something else the Lone Star tick can do. It can trigger an allergy to red meat. It's called alpha-gal syndrome. And yes, I agree that we gals are alpha, but that's not what that is. After a bite, some people develop a serious allergic reaction to red meat. Like they were fine eating burgers their whole lives, and then one tick bite later, they can't touch red meat again. It's crazy. But in general, I do think that everyone should cut back on red meat anyway, but I digress. Then we have the American dog tick. This can be found throughout the eastern US and parts of the West. It carries Rocky Mountain spotted fever and tularemia, both of which can be severe if untreated. Then we have the Rocky Mountain wood tick, also found in the Mountain West. It also carries Rocky Mountain spotted fever plus Colorado tick fever. Lastly, the brown dog tick. This is found all over the world, including throughout the entire US. And can you guess what it prefers? Dogs. And it can survive and breed indoors, which makes it particularly hard to get rid of once it's in your home. Tick-borne illnesses in the US more than doubled between 2004 and 2019, and the numbers have only climbed since. In 2022, Lyme disease cases alone hit over 62,000 reported cases. That's up from an annual average of about 37,000 cases just a few years before. But here's the kicker. The CDC estimates that approximately 476,000 Americans are actually diagnosed and treated for Lyme disease every year. Less than a tenth of those cases are ever officially reported. So the official numbers are obviously already alarming, but the real number is possibly 5 to 10 times higher. And the jump in 2022 was partly due to a change in reporting requirements. So high incidence states now only need a positive lab test to count a case rather than gathering additional clinical information from doctors' offices. So some of the increase reflects better data, not just more infections. But I mean, the trend is kind of hard to deny. Climate change is expanding tick habitat. Warmer winters mean obviously more ticks survive, and their range is spreading now north into areas like Canada that didn't used to have this same problem. Now let's talk about Lyme disease because it's personal. And yes, it is singular, it's not plural, it's not Lyme's disease. It's just Lyme disease. The bacterium that causes Lyme disease has been in North America for at least 60,000 years. A team at Yale sequenced the full genome of the bacteria and traced it all the way back to that. That means Lyme disease existed long before any humans were even on this continent. It was just kind of doing its thing, circulating in animal populations for just a cool tens of thousands of years before we showed up and inserted ourselves into its ecosystem. So, what brought it to humans? Us, mostly. During the colonial period in America, settlers cleared massive amounts of forest in the Northeast and they hunted white-tailed deer to near extinction, by the way. Deer are the primary host for adult ticks. No deer, fewer ticks. Then, starting in the 1800s, those northeastern farms got abandoned as people moved west to farm in the Midwest. The forests regrew, the deer came back, and the ticks exploded along with them. By the early 1900s, doctors in Europe were actually starting to describe symptoms we now recognize as Lyme-related, particularly the bullseye rash called erythema migrans, first documented by a Swedish dermatologist named Arvid Azelius. He documented this around 1909, but nobody connected the dots. In the US, Lyme disease wasn't formally identified until 1975 after a mysterious outbreak of arthritis in and around the town of Old Lyme, Connecticut. A group of children were showing up with arthritis, which is obviously unusual for kids, so researchers from Yale got to investigating. They eventually identified the black-legged tick as the culprit, and then in 1982, a scientist named Willy Bergdorfer isolated the specific bacteria causing the infection. And fun fact, if you didn't catch Lyme disease, Old Lyme, Connecticut, the bacteria is actually named after Willy, Borrelia burgdorferi. So, here's my little story about Lyme. I contracted Lyme disease my senior year of high school. This is when I was living in Wisconsin, which is one of the highest risk states in the country. And later down the line, my sweet baby angel dog Darby, she got it too. And I think our cat Kenny also had it. Basically, just a Lyme household. No big deal. And here's the thing about getting diagnosed with Lyme. So, a lot of people either catch it early because of the rash, like I did. I was showering and I noticed the tick fall off on my side and I instantly saw the bullseye. So I went and I told my dad, and we went to the clinic in town. They took some blood tests and then they were all, "Hey girl, yeah, sorry, it's nasty, but you got the Lyme. Here's some chalky medicine. Stay out of the sun. See you later." And that bullseye rash got so gross, you guys. It honestly looked like I got kicked by a horse or something. The skin started to peel off. There was blood. There was pus, just the whole works, all that nasty shit. I had to wear this giant gauze patch for like a week, but then after that, I was kind of just all hunky dory back to normal. But some people don't catch it for a while because the symptoms are so vague and the rash honestly isn't guaranteed. Or it might be in a place where you can't see it, like your head, under your hair, your armpit, anywhere warm, really. You might experience some fatigue, maybe some joint pain, a little brain fog, some headaches. It can honestly look like 100 different things, and that's why it so often gets missed. And the longer that it goes undiagnosed, the more complicated things get. I was lucky in the sense that I got diagnosed right away. Like, literally, tick fell off, same day, went and got diagnosed. A lot of people aren't so lucky. And I have lived with what's called dormant or chronic Lyme since then. Mine is what they call quiet. So it's not actively making me symptomatic most of the time that I'm aware of. I've had to go in a few times, skip blood tests, but it's sleeping, whatever. But that doesn't mean it's gone. And on that note, let's talk about how Lyme disease works in the body because There's a lot of confusion around this. When the bacteria enters your system, the first signs usually appear within 3 to 30 days. So that's a really wide range. The famous bullseye rash happens in about 70 to 80% of cases, but not everyone gets it, and not every rash looks like a perfect target. Sometimes it's just a little red patch, and you often will get those flu like symptoms that often show up around the same time, the fever, the fatigue, muscle aches, headache, all the things that I just discussed. If it's caught early and treated with antibiotics, usually doxycycline, amoxicillin, sulfurazine, most people recover fully. Early treatment is key, obviously. So that 3 to 30 days window, that really matters. But here's where it gets complicated. So between 10 and 20% of people who are treated for Lyme disease continue to experience symptoms for months or even years after the infection is technically cleared. This is called post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome, PTLDS, or what a lot of patients call chronic Lyme, though the medical community does debate that terminology. The symptoms of PTLDS are what people often describe as straight up debilitating. So, severe fatigue, widespread joint and muscle pain, sleep problems, depression, and mild to severe brain fog. So, like difficulty with memory, processing information, multitasking, all that jazz. And these aren't small in your head complaints. They can significantly impact daily functioning. John Hopkins research describes the chronic symptom burden as substantially greater than what healthy people experience with normal aches and pains. As of right now, scientists don't fully understand why some people develop persistent symptoms after treatment and others don't. One theory is that the bacteria can enter a kind of dormant state. Researchers call these drug tolerant persisters, bacteria that essentially go quiet and don't respond to the antibiotics that kill the active form. This is part of why some people will get treatment, they'll feel better for a while, and then they relapse. And honestly, this got me wondering a lot. I'm always wondering about Lyme disease. So if mine is dormant, is it still doing something? Well, research suggests that it might be. The inflammation that Lyme triggers doesn't always just turn off, even when the bacteria aren't actively replicating. A 2024 study out of Tulane found that persistent neurological symptoms after Lyme treatment may be tied to ongoing inflammation in brain and nerve tissue, meaning the bacteria may be gone, but the damage it triggered keeps causing problems. So when people say they have chronic Lyme and the doctor says, "You're treated, you're fine," that's not always correct. There's very much a disconnect there, and it's very much documented, and it's something that researchers are actively trying to solve. So if you had Lyme disease and something still feels wrong, you really might not be imagining it. Now, why does only the deer tick carry Lyme disease? This is a question that I have wondered about a lot. Not all ticks carry Lyme disease, right? So, what makes the black-legged tick, aka the deer tick, different? Well, it comes down to what those ticks eat and how their biology works. The black-legged tick has a particular taste for white-footed mice, which are basically living reservoirs for Borrelia burgdorferi. That one, remember? They carry the bacteria but don't get sick from it. When a larval tick feeds on an infected mouse, it picks up that bacteria, it carries the bacteria through every subsequent life stage, and when it feeds on a human, it transmits it. Other ticks, like the American dog tick, they don't feed on white-footed mice the same way, so they're much less likely to pick up the Lyme bacteria in the first place. It's a very specific ecological chain. If you break any link in it, you break the transmission. Also, timing matters. For Lyme disease to be transmitted, the tick generally needs to be attached for at least 36 to 48 hours. This is not true for every disease ticks carry. Powassan virus, for example, can transmit in as little as just 15 minutes, which is terrifying. But for Lyme specifically, you usually have that 36 to 48 hour window. This is why daily tick checks matter so much if you've been outside at all. Okay, doing a little creepy crawly check in. How are you feeling? You feel like you have little bugs all over you? Well, let's talk about how to keep these things off of you. First, let's go over some of the most effective things. First up, permethrin on your clothing. This is the gold standard. Permethrin is an insecticide that you spray on your clothes, shoes, and gear before you go out. So, not on your skin, only on fabric. Studies out of the University of Rhode Island found that people wearing permethrin treated shoes and socks were 73 times less likely to be bitten by a tick. 73 times. You can buy pre treated clothing or you can spray your own gear and it lasts through multiple washes. Second thing is DEET or picaridin on your skin. The CDC recommends DEET at 20 to 30% concentration for skin application against ticks, and picaridin at 20% is a solid alternative if you don't like DEET. You just apply it to exposed skin and then you wash it off when you come inside. The third thing, wear light colored clothing that covers your skin. I'm talking long sleeves, long pants, tuck your pants into your socks. I know, you're gonna look like a nerd, but ticks can't latch onto what they can't reach, and light colors will make them easier to spot. The fourth thing, do a tick check every single time you come in from outside, especially check your scalp, behind your ears, back of the neck, your armpits, behind your knees, and definitely check your groin area. Basically, anywhere warm and hidden. Also, if you can, shower within 2 hours of coming inside. It can wash off unattached to ticks and give you a chance to do a full check. And for all my crunchy people out there, I do have some natural options for you that do have some great evidence behind them. The first one is actually really cute and it has a lot of other benefits as well. Chickens! For real! If you have a yard, free range chickens will actively hunt and eat ticks. Guinea fowl are even more effective. They're basically little tick seeking missiles. For rural and suburban homeowners with space, adding poultry is a legitimate tick management strategy, amongst a million other benefits. However, full disclosure, if chickens aren't kept carefully, they can actually attract fowl ticks. That's a different species that feeds on birds. I've had a run in, not with these, but with bird mites because of a sparrow nest on our patio. And they make you feel like a meth head. So you need to take care of your chickens. Okay. It's not just like a set it and forget it situation. Okay. Or you are not going to be happy. Another option is putting cedar mulch around the perimeter of your yard. It works as a great deterrent. Ticks hate the oils in cedar wood. So used along the border between your lawn and any wooded areas, put it under your deck, around play equipment, next to your basement windows, all that good stuff. And the next thing is something that I used to deal with those nasty bird mites. It's called diatomaceous earth, and it can kill ticks by dehydrating them. It'll also dry your hands out really bad, so wear gloves. Also, maybe a mask, to be honest. Another thing to note is that it loses effectiveness in moisture, and it's not really practical for large outdoor areas. It's better to use as more of a spot treatment. For those bird mites that we had to deal with, we just kind of sprinkled it all over our patio, dusted it on our windows and our doors, um, put it all over our furniture, and then we just kind of let it sit for a day, and then we vacuumed it all up, and then after a couple of days, we were done with those mites, which was like night and day difference because those tiny little bird mites, you guys, oh my gosh, if you have an abandoned nest near your home, move it away, get it away, put gloves on and get it away and throw those gloves away, or just don't even touch it. I don't even know because these little things, you don't see them. We didn't see them. And then all of a sudden you feel them, but you don't see them. And so I was walking around, walking my dog, and I literally probably looked like a crazy meth head because I was just scratching and like putting my hands up to my eyes to try to see what is going on. And then we finally realized what it was. And that diatomaceous earth, heaven sent, okay? Anyway, next, you can plant plants that naturally repel ticks. So, lavender, rosemary, marigolds, sage, mint, and garlic, yum, 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 they all have tick repelling properties. And they help keep mosquitoes away too, my other nemesis. Planting these around your patios, walkways, along your property border, it just adds a really nice layer of natural deterrence. And it looks nice. And speaking of planting, rethink your landscaping a little bit. Take a look at it. Ticks like shade and moisture, so keep grass trimmed short, remove leaf litter, create a buffer zone between your lawn and any wooded areas using wood chips or gravel. Ticks are very reluctant to cross dry open spaces. You also want to limit wildlife that carries ticks. So, deer and mice are the primary culprits. Deer resistant landscaping, fencing, and securing compost and food sources can reduce how much wildlife is moving through your yard. And I know they're cute. I love to look at them. I bet it's amazing to have them laying in your yard. But honestly, you just kind of have to pick your poison with this. Either have deer chilling in your yard or not have to deal with ticks. It's kind of your call. And then obviously for pets, I'm not a vet, so talk to your vet. There are excellent tick prevention options for your dogs and cats. Don't let your pet's tick checks slide either. Honestly, I think the whole reason that I even got Lyme disease was because we had an indoor outdoor cat, Kenny, and I'm assuming it was on him, and then he would lay in bed with me, and then the rest is history. There are a couple things that don't work as well as people think, though. I'm talking about those wristbands, the patches, those ultrasonic devices. Studies consistently show that these are not effective against ticks. So, honestly, I would say don't waste your money. Now, laboratory studies show that oils like cedarwood, lavender, spearmint, and oregano do have natural tick repellent properties. Remember, I said to plant those. However, oil of lemon eucalyptus is the only plant-based ingredient recommended by the CDC to put on your skin. And you should never use them to remove a tick once it has already bitten you. I used to think that peppermint oil made it back out of your skin because I think I probably saw it on some TikTok or something. Ew, TikTok. Ew. Ugh. Anyway, but if a tick is already attached, smothering it with essential oils, petroleum jelly, or rubbing alcohol is highly dangerous. When a tick is suffocated or irritated by an oil, its defense mechanism is actually to regurgitate its stomach contents directly into your bloodstream. And that significantly increases your chances of contracting Lyme disease or other tick-borne pathogens. Personally, I like to use Murphy's Naturals bug oil spray stuff. It smells so good. It smells like citronella candle, and I just love that smell. And honestly, I feel like it kind of makes my skin nice and soft because of the oil. They also have their own candles and incense sticks. So when we were living in Minnesota and Wisconsin, whenever we'd go camping, every camping trip required bringing the candle and or the incense, obviously in the spray. And another thing, if you can find swamp gator insect repellent, just get it. Truly kept the bugs away from me all day and all night. The smell is not your average like bug spray smell. I don't even know how to describe it, but it actually smells good. I can never find it anymore. And luckily in Colorado, we don't really have a lot of bugs to deal with. So I just have my little spider friends, and honestly, they keep the annoying bugs away. So I'm okay with them. Obviously, there's no single thing that gives you 100% protection. The best protection is layering multiple strategies. So, treated clothing, repellent on skin, checking your body, keeping your yard managed. Whatever it is you want to do, the more layers, the better your odds. And if you're in Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Northeast, or any of the mid Atlantic states, just know I feel for you. It's one of the reasons that I wanted out of there, as dramatic as that sounds. Tick season is real and it is long. Late April through August is peak nymph season, which is peak risk season. But adults are active in fall too, sometimes into early winter on warm days. So year-round awareness is seriously the best move if you live in those areas. And if you ever find a tick attached to you, remove it with fine tipped tweezers as close to the skin as possible. Pull straight up with steady pressure. Do not twist. Do not burn it. Looking at you, Dad. My dad burned one out of my armpit once. And don't cover in petroleum jelly. That is a myth, and it can actually make things worse by causing the tick to release more fluid. You know, what I was just talking about. Ew. After you remove the tick, clean the bite area with rubbing alcohol. And then, if you can, save the tick in a sealed bag or a container if you want to get it tested. And if you develop any symptoms, rash, fever, fatigue, joint pain, like within the next couple days or weeks after a bite, I really encourage you to tell your doctor about the tick exposure. It honestly changes what they look for. And truly, every woman can agree to this. You have to advocate for yourself. All right, creepy crawly check. Are they kind of going away? Are they still really bad? I didn't think that I would have a lot to talk about on ticks, but once I started digging, I just kept learning more and more and more, and I wanted to share as much as possible. And we covered a lot today. I mean, we covered possible alien origins of humanity, tick biology, Lyme disease history, and we talked about how to keep those little nightmare creatures off your body. So I know it's not like a typical combination, but it's my show, and I do what I do. If you have thoughts on today's episode or you have a topic that you want me to cover, my DMs are open. Drop in, say hi. You can find me on Instagram at indistinct.pod or at Eliza Hollister. You can also tell me what I missed, argue with me about whether we're aliens. Honestly, I'm here for it all. And if you're not already subscribed wherever you're listening, please do that. It genuinely makes a huge, huge difference. And if you have 2 more seconds to leave a rating and review, that helps even more. We will chat next week. Love ya. Love you. Bye.